Welcome to the Module 3, Lesson number 1, from the understanding of the concept to the selection and analysis of the call for proposal. My name is Riccardo Nori, and I will be your teacher for this lesson. Well, a first reflection concerns the importance of understanding a situation before designing a project. In particular, a project is a series of activities aimed at bringing clearly specified objectives within a defined time period and with a defined budget. The framework for judging a project relevance is provided by the needs of beneficiaries. Thus, even we may already have ideas about what the problems and needs of our relevant stakeholders are, it is, however, important that we don't design projects based on these preconceived ideas or jump to solutions before we have really understood problems and needs. First, you have to know and understand the context, then you can conceive a project idea that is feasible. We need to ask communities what their problem, needs, resources, talents, and skills are, and to understand the wider context. It is important to do this each time we are starting a new project, even if we have worked with a community for a long time, as the context is always changing. This deep understanding will enable us to use our time and resources wisely and to design projects that meet the real needs of our community. Will enable us to build on what is working well already and bring about positive change. Here we have that good project design allows our organization to have a greater impact. And this implies that the organizations that have good project design are good at planning, implementing, and learning from their work. And this implies that work that is well planned and incorporates learning is much more likely to be successful and lead to lasting change. And this implies that good project design will help us to grow the reputation of our organization and the funding that we are able to achieve. And this implies, again, that good project design allows our organization to have a great impact, that our work will benefit more people more effectively for longer time. And this is a virtuous cycle, the virtuous cycle of the project design. Well, there are a variety of tools that we can adopt and apply to collect data and analyze the local situation and problems. Of course, we are not expected to use all of these tools. Instead, we are expected to select the ones best suited to our context. It is often best, let me say, to use a few tools that complement each other. PESTLE, for example, is one of these tools. PESTLE is an acronym to help us remember what areas of community life we should be interested in, and can be used when we are collecting information. PESTLE is an acronym that stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. It is important that we decide which areas of concern are most important for our project, and once we have a better idea of the areas we need to know more about, we can start to collect accurate, reliable, and sufficient data. To do this, we can speak directly with the members of our community, individually or in groups. By the way, we need to think about where we will get data on each of the areas we are interested in and choose the best tools for each data source, area of interest, person, or group. Finally, the decision about how much data is sufficient depends on the context we would like to analyze. Okay, let's get into the tools and methods to collect data in particular context. Generally, there are two main types of data Primary data, secondary data. Primary data is collected directly from the community by you or your team. Secondary data is information already available, as for example, this can include books, academic research papers, assessments carried out by other organizations, government publication, statistics, internet, media, and so on. When it comes to primary data, it is important to collect data from as many different relevant people as possible. People will experience situation differently depending on factors such as their age, for example, gender, ability, ethnicity, social status, or wealth. So you will need to get as many opinions as possible and compare the results to get a full picture of a situation. You won't be able to contact everyone, so please think about how you're going to choose people to speak to. You might want to choose specific people because they have specialist knowledge or select a random sample. Make sure include people who are sometimes left out, such as people who are elderly or people with disabilities, those who are ill or those who are marginalized or more vulnerable. It is important at the end to disaggregate your data. Disaggregate means to specify how your data relates to people of different gender, age, ability, ethnicity, etc. For example, if we are collecting data on incomes in the community featured in our project scenario, we might want to divide that into men and women or into different age ranges to see how our project can address different parts of the community. It is really important that you collect enough data to allow you to analyze it and make decisions about project design, but avoid collecting data that isn't going to be used. Or, on the other hand, overwhelming communities with assessments that are too long or complex. What is considered enough will depend on your context. That's why you need to know very well your context. On the other hand, secondary data is cheap to use. So it's often the best starting point. It is important to consider, of course, how trustworthy data sources are. And you may to consider this question, for example, are the facts accurate? Are the facts supported by evidence? Is the information up to date? Can the source be trusted? That's why we start mainly from books, academic research papers, which is a really relevant source of information, and but also government publication, European Commission, European Union communication and publication statistics, internet and media. We have a lot of information that we can gather from the internet, for example, that can be trustworthy, so we can use it for our analysis. Okay, let's go deeper into the methods that can be used to collect primary data. There are two types of primary data. First of all, that we can collect, that we might collect. Quantitative data is data that can be analyzed in numerical forms, such as number, frequencies, rates, or proportions. It is quick and easy to collect from a large number of people. And if the results are statistically significant, they can be applied to the wider population. Qualitative data, instead, tends to reflect perceptions, opinions, emotions, and observation. This can help us to build an in-depth picture of the context on how a problem affects persons or communities. Qualitative data does not have statistical significance, so the findings cannot be applied to the wider population. However, the findings can provide a deeper explanation and understanding of why a situation is the way it is. So qualitative data can be as relevant as the quantitative ones. It is best to collect some of each type of data in order to get a complete understanding of the situation. Let's go to the methods. Survey are used to collect data from many people very quickly, giving a wide range of data. Surveys can provide qualitative or quantitative data or both, which can be analyzed to draw general conclusion about the wider community if a suitable sample of people is chosen, of course. A survey is fairly easy to do, but it is very important to get the design of it right. A survey often has a standard form to fill in based on a set of questions. Questions should be simple with a limited number of possible answers. And the number of questions should be, of course, enough to give a suitable amount of data, but not so many that people lose interest while filling it in. So please try to ensure that the survey will take no longer than 30 minutes to complete. The form must be well laid out and easy to complete. And whatever. It may take time, of course, to design a survey and analyze its finding, but these increasingly smartphone or tablets I use to collect data, and technology can help us, can do some basic analysis very quickly. So it's a really interesting method to gather relevant data. Interviews can allow us to gain a deeper understanding of people's experiences and opinions. Often key information are chosen because they can provide a particular insight into an aspect of the situation, and these key informants are important figures in the community. Interviews can be structured, can be categorized in structured interviews, semi-structured interviews, unstructured interviews. Structured interviews are use exactly the same questions in the same order each time. Semi-structured interviews are often best as they have a checklist of questions or points to cover to make sure nothing is missed, but the interviewer also has the freedom to explore any interesting answers in more depth. Of course, unstructured interviews deal with a very free investigation of opinion and data provided by the interviewers. Further to methods, focus group. Focus group is a discussion that brings together a group of people to talk about a particular topic. It helps us to understand the problems they face and the needs they have. It enables people with different views to discuss their differences, challenge assumptions, and possibly reach and understand it together of the needs of the community. By exploring issues together from the start, communities can begin to own them project themselves. This is really important. The recommended size of a focus group is between 6 and let me say 12 people. This gives everyone a chance to speak, makes chats between individuals less likely. And it is important to be aware of the kinds of people you have in the group and how they might affect how people interact. Okay, it's really, really important. Let me underline this concept. You need to be really aware of kinds of people you have in the group and how they might interact. So set out rules before you start so that the conversation will stay focused always, and encourage everyone to contribute in a productive, supportive way. For every focus group, you will need a facilitator whose role is to ask questions, keep the discussion focused, and make sure everyone get a chance to speak. This is really important. You will also need someone else to make notes of the discussion. This is further really important things. And at the end, the facilitator can sum up the main points and check for accuracy. What about the timing for focus group? Allow about 90 minutes for a focus group discussion. Finally, just to show you a further method that can be really interesting and easy to use when gathering data, let me talk about ranking and sorting exercises. There are several techniques to ask people to rank, sort, or arrange items. This can help you find out which issues or items they prioritize. One of these is pairwise ranking, which is this useful technique to help people prioritize issues or decide the importance of different options. The tool compares two options at time and asks participants which they prefer or which is most important. The answer help to decide on overall preferences and importance. This is a way to sort or rank information, opinion, options about some data. Okay, let's move to the analysis of the situation. So we have gathered the information, and once that we have gathered enough data and information about the issues and broader context, this data now needs to be analyzed to convert it into useful information that we can use to make decisions. Deciding when we have enough data will depend on our context. We have already said it, and but also on the complexity of the problem we are trying to address and how great the needs are. In the project cycle, the analysis is the stage that comes after assessment and data gathering. In reality, these two stages overlap and inform each other. In fact, we might go back and collect some more data if our analysis reveals an area needing further study. For example, for this group, I'm often used to collect data and then analyze it along with participants. Finally, some of the tools used to collect data can also be used as analysis tool. For example, pairwise ranking, already discussed a few minutes ago, can be used also for analysis if you are asking participants to prioritize needs. One of the possible tool techniques for doing an analysis is the problem tree. It's a really well-known tool. A problem tree provides a way to work out and see the causes and effects of a problem and identify factors that may need to be addressed or considered so that the problem can be solved. It's a good idea to create problem trees with various stakeholders who can help analyze the existing situation from different perspectives. And the problem tree technique can be divided into 4 stages. The first stage is to identify the main problem or central issue and summarize it in a few words on the trunk of our tree. It is important to identify existing problems not possible, imagine or future one. If there is no agreement on the central issue, then decide on one temporarily and begin the analysis, but return at a later stage to investigate the other options. Next, ask yourself what the causes of this core problem are and write them on sticky notes or cards. Once you think you have all the immediate causes of the problem, try and identify some of the underlying causes. Dig deeper with your questions. What causes that? And then what causes that? And so what causes that? Now, third stage, start adding your cards, sticky notes onto the roots of the tree. Order them so that the notes, cards with the immediate causes are closest to the problem trunk of the tree, and the underlying causes are farther down to the roots. Like real roots, they divide and divide again as you identify further causes. You can play around with the order as you see different connections, of course. Then, finally, fill the branches of your tree with the effects and consequences of the central problem. Ask yourself, what is happening as a result of the problem, and what does that lead to? And so, what does that lead to? Often the same issue will appear as both a cause and a consequence. This is fine because it starts to show cycles. Once a problem tree has been completed, you should work up the roots and branches and check that there are logical connections between different causes and effects. If you identify any gaps in logic, add in a new card, and at the end, you should be able to read completed problem tree from the bottom up, from the root causes to the central problem, and then from the central problem to the effect. Let's see an example. Here there is an example. Of course, it's quite simple. From our data collection activities, we have found that a big problem affecting the young people in our community is overweight. This is therefore the central problem written on the trunk of our problem tree in diagram. The causes and consequences of this problem are written in the roots and branches of the tree based on our findings from the data collection. For example, here we have the commercial influence produces or influences diet that contains too much fat and sugar, that implies, partially of course, the overweight among young people, which implies food-induced forms of cancer increase, which implies healthcare cost increase. On the other hand, we have lax sport facilities, computer games, and the internet, which could imply not sufficient exercise, and again, partially overweight among young people, and more young patients with diabetes and healthcare cost increase. Okay, so the problem tree is a diagram building in the logic of causes and consequences, putting at the core of the tree the core problem. Okay. A problem tree can then be turned into a solution tree, which is the next stage in deciding how problems can be solved. Make sure that the cards show final situation you would like to see and not actions that you're going to take. For example, young people do not sufficient sport exercise. Changes in young people do sufficient sport exercise. This process of changing the meaning of the card from a negative meaning to a positive one, which is the changing from a problem to a solution, the status, let me say, is a process that is repeated for all the problem statements in the problem tree, and this will form a solution tree. The solution tree can then be used to select some of the solution and try to address this solution building a project proposal. That's why we are considering these techniques and methods, because we want to gather data from our communities, try to understand their needs and problems, use their problems and draw their problems with a problem tree, define the solution tree, and then address the solution with our project proposal, but considering the main causes that can affect the problem and the solution, of course, and considering the main consequences and the main impacts that a solution can provide to solve partially or to increase the solution of a core problem that we are investigating, that is a problem which is really at the core of our community. A further technique, which is a really well-known technique, is the SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is useful for considering the strengths and weaknesses of a community organization and for identifying opportunities and threats that might prevent change. This can help us think about the best actions to help that group make the most of their opportunities and prepare for threats that could undermine the project's successes. The SWOT analysis could be done as an exercise with the community, of course, or once we have spent time gathering information from the community. It can be useful to see our SWOT analysis by dividing our paper into 4 quarters. Begin in the first quarter by writing down all the strengths of the community. We may want to ask what is the community already doing well, what resources are available, which individuals, groups, or organizations are already involved in bringing about change. Then we can start thinking about the weaknesses of the community. What do the community need? What resources are lacking? Which people are being affected the most? Next, we can start thinking about the potential opportunities in the situation which, if realized, could help to bring about positive change. Which individuals could you engage with? Which resources may the community be able to ask the local government for? And finally, what threats could prevent positive change? In other words, which individuals may resist change? What external issues could prevent change? Example given: environmental factors, political events, cultural factors. The results of our SWOT analysis can be analyzed further using other tools so that our understanding goes deeper. For example, one of the weaknesses revealed could become the central problem in a problem tree. So we can complement and use both the techniques to have a deeper understanding of the situation and then to define better projects. Further analysis methods, as the stakeholder analysis, this is really relevant and important. We need to build a project which are based on a strong stakeholder analysis. Who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are people who will be affected by your project, as well as the people who will influence your project success. This can be individuals, groups, communities, or institutions. It is vital, to identify our stakeholder at the start of the project and understand the nature of their roles, interests, and relationship with one another. This will help you to design and plan your project to consider the needs, aim, and influence of those it will come into contact with, and help us include the right people in our decision making. That's the main objective of the stakeholder analysis. Also, the stakeholder analysis will help us to anticipate the power dynamics that might be at play between different stakeholders and reduce some potential negative impacts on our project. The stakeholder analysis should be done at the start of the project and reviewed throughout the project cycle to check that the needs and opinions of the stakeholder are being adequately addressed and that stakeholder with influence are being properly engaged. There are 3 stages in the stakeholder analysis, namely these are identify stakeholder, the first stage; second stage, consider the power and interests of stakeholder; third stage, consider how stakeholders might have an impact on the project and how you might need to manage them. When identify the project stakeholders, consider all of them. For example, just to cite, there are different categories of stakeholder: just to say users, which are who are project participants or beneficiary who will directly benefit from the products or services your project provides. Governance stakeholders, people who care about how the project is run. Providers, suppliers, these are people who are going to participate in the work of the project, including staff and partners. Influencers, these are people who can change the direction of the project, such as government officials or even the media. Dependents, people who want something from the project or then the planet changes. For example, other projects depends on one of the outputs. And finally, a relevant category is the sustainer. Sustainer are people who will ensure the benefits of our project continue after we have finished our work. In the second stage, the consideration, the evaluation of power and interest of stakeholder. We need to consider the stakeholder power over and interest in the project. Power is the influence that stakeholders have over the project. They might be able to support your work or might have the power to block what you're trying to do. Interest is how much the project goals align with the stakeholder interests. While our project participants are highly interested in the project, they might have limited power over the project success. At the same time, there will be other stakeholders such as local and national government, for example, who are in a position of power to influence the success of the project, even though they are not the target beneficiaries. It is important to develop good working relationship with the stakeholder with both high power and influence to ensure adequate support to the project. On the other hand, stakeholders with high interest and low power need special initiatives to ensure their interests are protected. In the third stage of the stakeholder analysis, which is the consideration on how stakeholders might have an impact on the project and how we might need to manage them, we need to consider some potential steps we might take to meet our stakeholders' need and interest. If, for example, they have high influence, we need to encourage them to give their support and help achieve success or avoid conflict. Okay. We have finished the methods and techniques to gather data and to analyze the situation. There are a lot of them, but they can be used when design a project. But before starting design a project, we need to select call for proposal by addressing the problems and needs that we have assessed. So data and tools for analysis tools can be used to understand the context, to define which the main problems and the needs and issues are. And then we need to start reasoning and finding the right call for proposal to build projects that really address the needs and the problems that you have assessed within our team. Okay, when selecting a call for proposals that can address our problems and needs, we need to consider the following steps. Research funding opportunities. So look for funding organization, government agency, and foundation, or research institutions that align with the areas we have identified. Visit their websites, review their funding programs, and search for any open call for proposal. Second step, read the call guidelines. Once you find the relevant call for proposal, carefully read the guidelines, objectives, and evaluation criteria. Understand the scope of the call, eligibility requirements, deadlines, and any specific formats of guidelines for proposal submission. Third, assess alignment, evaluate how well the call aligns with the problems and needs that you have identified, consider whether the call's objectives and focus areas directly address the issues you have assessed, look for keywords or themes that match your needs. Fourth, consider resources and expertise. Assess your own resources, capabilities, and expertise. Determine if you have the necessary skills, knowledge, and capacity to develop a strong proposal that addresses the identified problems and needs. Fifth, collaboration and partnership. Explore potential collaboration or partnership with other organizations, institutions, or even individuals who have complementary expertise or resources. Collaborating is important because it can strengthen your proposal and decrease its chances of success. Sixth, proposal development. If the call aligns well with your needs and you have the necessary resources, start developing your proposal. Craft a clear and compelling project description, objectives, methodology, and expected outcomes. Make sure to address the evaluation criteria outlined in the call guidelines and start elaborating your proposal. Review and feedback. Seek feedback on your proposal from colleagues, experts, or mentors. Incorporate their suggestions to strengthen your proposal and ensure it effectively addresses the identified problems and needs. Finally, submit the proposal. Follow the submission instructions provided in the call guidelines. It is really important. Pay attention, please, to the deadline and any required supporting documents. Finally, submit your proposal within the specified time frame. Just to provide, let's see an example. For example, the European Union offers a wide range of funding opportunities in the field of sport, mainly through the Erasmus Plus program and the pilot projects on preparatory actions. Both the initiatives are managed by the European Education and Culture Executive Agency, the ESEA. The Erasmus Plus program, in particular, is the main source of European Union funding in the field of sports. Erasmus Plus actions in the fields of sport promote the participation in sport, physical activity, for example, voluntary activities. On the other hand, the pilot projects and preparatory actions are designed to test the feasibility of new actions and programs and target several topics, such as, for example, inclusion of refugees through sports, support to mobility schemes in the sports sector, of course, development of new forms of sport and physical activity through the improvement of sport facilities, and so on. Selecting the most suitable call for proposal for your project and carefully analyzing the text are the first two steps towards a competitive project, but are often the most underestimated by project designers. It is extremely important to pay proper attention to these steps, selecting the most suitable call for proposal and carefully analyze the text, because a project that is not well aligned with the call has little chance to obtain funding. And this does not only refer to the respect of admissibility conditions and eligibility criteria, okay? It is good to remember that all the words in the call topics, especially for the European ones, have a meaning and are included in the text with a specific intent. None of the words in the call topics can be ignored on pain of the project's competitiveness. Firstly, it is good to clarify the structure of a call for proposal, and to understand what information can be derived from each of its components. The structure is specific condition, general information. X, for example, the deadline. This indicates the day and time by which the proposal must be submitted. It helps to assess how much time we have for the preparation of the project. Then expected contribution per project. This indicates the volume of activities, sites, and ambition of your project. Indicative budget, by comparing the expected contribution per project with the budget allocated to each topic, it is possible to understand how many projects can be funded within the topic, and thus to know the probability that our project will be funded. Type of action. This gives indication with respect to the type of activities that are eligible and that should be predominant in our project, and eligibility condition, which stands for, in addition to the standard eligibility condition, as are on the standard eligibility condition, some topics may include specific eligibility condition that should be taken into consideration. Expected outcomes. It indicates what the expected effects of the projects are in the medium term. The project's results should therefore contribute to these effects. Near to the expected outcome is the scope, is a section within the expected outcomes of the text that identifies the needs and gaps to be addressed in your project and the objectives to be achieved. And finally, the cross-cutting priorities. And this part identifies the cross-cutting priorities that actions should take into account. For example, there are a few like ethics and integrity, open science, gender and inclusiveness, integration of humanities and social sciences, international cooperation, and so on. When reading, it is really important. When reading the text of the call, there are many clues which help you to understand what the funding institution expects to receive in response to a given topic. The suggestion, my suggestion, is to read the topic carefully and look for the following elements in the text. Verbs. In the scope section, so in the expected outcomes and scope sections, verbs indicate which actions are expected in the project. Example given: set up, develop, validate, and which will therefore guide the definition of the project's objectives. Verbs such as reduce, increase, recall quantitative measures, thus indicating the expectation to read in the project both an indication of the current situation and values and what they might be at the end of the project and afterwards, thanks, of course, to the actions developed in the project. On the other hand, the verbs such as shall, should, could, is recommended, is encouraged, give a further indication of some of the expectations. Indications on the degree of alignment with the call. Often in the text call for both section expected outcome and scope, you will find bulleted list preceded by phrases such as all the following expected outcomes or most of the following research activities. The words some, all, and most will guide you on what the level of adherence of your project to the call should be. Examples, inclusions and exclusions. Words such as may include but are not limited to introduce examples of expectations. On the contrary, words such as should not address or are excluded from the topics indicate themes which are not the subject of the call and therefore should not be included in your project. Indications on target groups. In the section expected outcome and scope, of course, you will find indication of the target of the audiences that are expected to benefit from your project's results. These will guide you in choosing the most suitable outputs for each audience, but also in defining your dissemination and exploitation strategy. legislative or scientific context. In some cases, footnotes include the references to external documents. This can be policy documents, background information, which will guide you to understand what has been done so far, what the objectives are on the policy agenda in your specific field, and how your project fits into this context. Suggestions on collaborations and synergies. Phrases such as the involvement of is encouraged, or synergies should be sought with someone, can give you indications on the types of organization that should be involved in your collaborative project as partners, or synergies that should be created in the course of the project. Finally, let me say that some of the strategy used by project design experts when approaching the preparation of a project include highlighting important elements and keywords in the text by adopting the suggestion that we have discussed a minute ago, dividing the text of the topic into sentences and reflecting on each of the sentences individually, creating tables or competence maps, sharing the analysis of the context with the project partners, and so on. Analyzing the relevance of your project idea to the selected call through these strategies and this suggestion will help you identify strengths and weaknesses in the early stage of preparation, thus increasing your chances of obtaining funding. We are at the end of our lesson. I hope that suggestions, methods, and some reflection will support you in define really good project and select the right call for proposal, submit a strong project based on strong analysis, for example, stakeholder analysis, and obtain funding and improve the condition of your community. Thanks, good luck, and goodbye to all of you.